city manager of Coronado. Very happy to be here and happy to welcome you here tonight for our informational forum about our Port Commissioner appointment and the role and responsibilities of that very important job. So as you know, the Unified Port District of San Diego has a board of port commissioners. San Diego, the city council sends one member to that. They represent Coronado along with the other cities in the Bay. This is a very important appointment the city council makes. It's to a 4-year term and to be there and represent and serve Coronado and work with the port. So our current commissioner, Commissioner Gary Vanelli, has been in this seat for 8 years. A lot of service to Coronado, and as he's stepping down at the end of the year, the city council will be contemplating its appointment for the new term. And we were very delighted Commissioner Vanelli made himself available for this session today, this informational meeting, to talk about the role, the responsibilities, and what it's like to be a commissioner on this very important board. So tonight is 1 hour, so we hope to end sharply at 7 o'clock. Not a city council meeting, really just an informal forum. We're going to receive a presentation from Commissioner Vanelli for a few minutes and then be here to answer questions as well about the role. So with that, I'm going to hand it right over to Commissioner Vanelli.
I'm going to use that microphone.
Okay. And actually, I do want to point out as well, thank you so much to the President and CEO of the port is here with us. Thank you. Mr. Joe Stuyvesant is here as well, along with other port staff in case there are questions from.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Can I do this? I've gotten both of my vaccinations and my booster shot. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I can take off my mask, but I won't try to get in front of you. Is that okay? If anybody has any problem, I won't do it. Okay? Okay? Okay?
Much better. Much better.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. First of all, thanks to Tina Friend. Thank you to the mayor and the city council for letting me do this public forum. As Tina said, I'm very biased. I think this is a very important position. Without getting into politics too much, as you know, we're a city of 2.2 square miles, and we have friends with the Navy, friends with the port, Caltrans, Sandag, the Airport Land Use Commission. There's a lot of people that can impact our city and often do, and the staff and the city council does a wonderful job with their leadership of keeping the city as best they can. By way of background, just real short, I flunked out of college and came out to the Navy here in 1968 before the bridge was built, and like everybody else, it happens probably 3 or 4 times every day. You go get to Coronado and you go, wow, wow. In fact, when I was up in Chicago in boot camp, when that chief petty officer came by, and there's, you know, in the Navy, when you first join the Navy, there's God Almighty and a chief petty officer, and about the equal. And they showed a guy scuba diving, a guy at that time, and I went like this right away. You're not supposed to do that when you're in the military, but I waved my hand. I said, okay, kid, we're going to teach you to be a frogman, and we'll send you to Coronado. I said, oh my God, what part of Vietnam is Coronado? But I got here, okay? So what my objective here tonight is, hopefully, and for the people listening in, is to hopefully inspire folks to think about becoming an applicant for this job. It's a very, very important job. It affects a lot of people, not only in our city, but all along the waterfront here. There's 51 miles worth of waterfront around our bay, and the port, Tidelands we control about 34 miles of that. And we do that for the state of California. We are a state agency. So try to keep that in mind. What I'd like to try to do is, not to bore you to death, maybe I have 6 slides here just to bring everybody up to speed on how I perceive the Port of San Diego. Tell you a little bit about how I perceive my job over the last 8 years as your port commissioner, the time involved and the commitments, and then maybe spend the rest of the time as informal as possible doing some Q&A. And for those folks that are out there at the end of the session, and folks here too, I'm going to give you my cell phone number. I want you to have my cell phone number. So, you know, sometimes there's a question that might come up later that you're not thinking about, or you may not want to ask that question in front of our neighbors here. And I'm more than willing to answer those phone calls to get the best candidates possible. My overall objective, again, is to give the council a very, very hard time. I want them to have a pool of candidates where they have a very difficult choice from a great, highly qualified, highly motivated candidate pool. And I think to do this job too, you need a passion. You need some type of passion to be able to do the job. For me, it's always been clean water. At every opportunity, I've tried to make the case that if you look around our bay, most of the best beaches around the bay, and I know I'm biased, are right here in Coronado. We have wonderful Kellogg Beach up by Point Loma, but if you look across the bay, people really can't put their toes in the water. That's important to me. I want people to have that opportunity, no matter where they come in this region, or 90+ thousand visitors a day we get pre-pandemic, to have the opportunity to actually get in the water. Why is that important to me? Because they're essentially little test tubes too. That will make sure that that water stays clean. I can say since 1968, when I first got here, and trying to be a frogman here, swimming in the bay here, that bay is cleaner today than it's ever been. But there are still hot spots, there are still bad spots, and it's a 24/7 job. You can never let our guard down to keep that bay going. And that's what motivated me over the last eight years. Having said that, okay, if you look at it, for those, the unanointed here, when Jim Mills and the state legislature back in the middle 60s passed special legislation to develop the San Diego Unified Port District, were relatively unique. We have a saying at our port, and most ports, if you've seen one port, you've seen one port. Each one's a little bit different. In the United States, most ports are departments within a particular big city. But here, we have 5 cities. We touch on five cities. And the people, and this is probably the most overregulated, overruled turf, water body, and land anywhere in the country. Anywhere in the country, I can safely say that. What we've been able to do in the 8 years I've been on board with my colleagues on the board, we've been able to convince State Lands Commission to give us jurisdiction of essentially the entire bay. So now we have the 34 miles of waterfront, the dry land, and about 14,000 more acres of water. And we actually have water off the city of Imperial Beach, and that's a story unto itself. But we were the first to jump on board with the city of Imperial Beach, the city of Chula Vista, and the county of San Diego to sue, to threaten suit to the federal government to have them help us out with the Tijuana River sewage, which is a chronic problem. Okay, Margarito. I thought it might be good, and I'm taking a lot of liberal license here, but the people who make the public policy makers. Here in our city council, we have the 5 city councilmen at this time that make public policy. At the Port of San Diego, by the Port Act, we have 7 commissioners, 3 from the city of San Diego, because they're a lot bigger than everybody else, a lot more people, and then 1 each from National City, Chula Vista, Imperial Beach, and I'm your Coronado representative. And I'm going to give you a flavor for these folks real quick, my characterization of these folks, and I hope they don't mind this. Our chairmanship usually rotates on an annual basis, We have an election, and we elect the chairman, the vice chair, and the secretary. The power of the chairmanship is the power of the agenda. They set the agenda and pretty much are the spokesperson or the narrative for that year for the port. I've argued unsuccessfully 2 different times. You're really not a port commissioner until you end up on a 6-1 vote. You're the 1 vote. That I thought it would be easier, there'd be more continuity with the port if we could keep the chair in the job for 2 years. But my fellow commissioners decided that's probably not a good thing to do. Because if you look at all these people, with the exception of me, they all have full-time employment. They have separate bosses and they have to make a living. I'm fortunate enough to be retired, so I've been able to devote a lot of time to this. Mike Zucchett, you might know that name, former San Diego City Council member, vice mayor of the city of San Diego, now is the paid executive director of one of the largest labor unions in San Diego, the MEU. What is that? MEU. Municipal Employees Union. Thank you. Okay. Very smart man, Duke and Santa Barbara background, knows land use inside out, knows intergovernmental relations, knows local government by the back of his hand. Dan Malcolm from the city of Imperial Beach is an attorney and a real estate developer and former city council member from the city of Imperial Beach. Rafael Castellanos, hopefully you saw his name when people were running for supervisor here in the South Bay District. Rafael threw his hat in the ring, lost out to Nora Bardas. But Rafael grew up in Winnemucca, Nevada, was a miner, truck driver, came to San Diego, fell in love like the rest of us do. A very, very shrewd, smart attorney that does a lot of what they call transactional real estate deals in a small boutique law firm in San Diego. myself, I'll get back to that, and more. A brilliant woman, was the city attorney for the city of Chula Vista for many, many years. My characterization of Ann, she's our CEQA expert, the California Environmental Quality Act, along with our Deputy General Counsel here, Rebecca Harrington, that those two ladies together can rip apart that state law and scratch it and have us scratching our heads. But Ann, a longtime city councilor, and now has advises on land use policy to various people. I also say Ann's probably the mother of something we call the Port Master Plan Update. Each of the cities around our region have general plans. We have a Port Master Plan. Ann was the one probably a good 7 years ago who got the momentum going within the port to do the Port Master Plan Update. She's also a big impetus behind the $1.2 billion waterfront hotel and convention center on transforming the South Bay in the city of Chula Vista. The two next ladies, I don't know that well. They're relatively new to our commission. They've been on board since January of this year. And it's been tough because most of the time we've been meeting virtually. So it's tough to get to know your left and right hand man. But Jennifer Lassar has her own development company. She does a lot of leadership training for folks. Jennifer says it, so I can, one of her most prominent things that she says about, she's married to a very important person to all of us, our state senator from here, Tony Atkins. So she's a spouse of Tony Atkins. Sandy Norano, National City, big shoes to fill. She replaced Dookie Valderrama, who probably served on our commission most longer than any other person. The City Council of National City kept Dookie on board for 16 years. So she's jumped in with both feet, a mom, mother of two, very much an environmental justice advocate, very much pro-environment, and is doing a spectacular job getting anointed into all things port. Okay. Budget. Up until the pandemic, we probably had about a $220 million budget going. You can see how this breaks down here. Most of our revenue, or the majority of our revenue, comes from real estate. The state titlelands are owned by we the people of the state of California, and we lease those lands to various tenants. Right now, we probably have 800 plus tenants and subtenants. For example, the ferry landing. We have one overall master tenant, and we probably have another 30 or so folks that are subtenants to that master tenant. So we took a big hit, us in San Francisco in California, with the pandemic, because we're more tourist related than the big cargo ports of Oakland and Long Beach or Seattle in that area. So we're down quite a bit. Through the good work of our staff and our president and CEO, Joe Stuyvesant, we hope to be getting, we've been told by the state that the American Rescue Act, the federal American Rescue Act, is doling out about $250 million to ports in California. Through Joe's great efforts, we think we're going to get about $100 million of that. Remains to be seen. A lot of strings attached, timelines, how you can spend it. So, great job. Kudos to staff for getting that done. Okay. Economic engine. Again, probably the thing here we'll get to it. A variety of things. We've invested billions of dollars in the port. Some of the things people like, some of the things people don't like. Probably the biggest thing was when the first convention center was first built, we paid for that in cash. When we were flush. We paid for that in cash. Things like the Rady Shell in Jacobs Park, which Ruben knows real well. We built that. We're, believe it or not, the $3.5 billion expansion of Terminal 1 at the airport, that's on port titlelands. So we had to work with the airport authority to do that. At one time, the airport authority was essentially under us, but state broke them apart. Again, $1.2 billion development down in Chula Vista. What I'm trying to point out here too is a lot of the things, the big things we do are on the other side of the bay. We like Coronado the way Coronado is. Okay? One of the things I've been able to do in this Port Master Plan update now, and for those of you that follow this, the programmatic EIR is out, and we're taking comments through the 23rd of December. One of the things we've established in that policy document is no additional hotel rooms within the city, within our titlelands next to the city. So that doesn't mean the Marriott or Lowe's can't build another hotel room. They could have to knock it down. There's no net increase per se. The Hotel Del isn't on our bailiwick, so that's not ours, as well as the Gloria de Bay Inn. We have sort of a green necklace. We take care of 22 public parks around the bay. We just approved, if you read in the paper today or yesterday, a $160 million hotel out in Shelter Island next to the airport. If it doesn't get appealed to the Coastal Commission, and we do have a hierarchy, we hope to break ground on that probably next year, and 2 years from then have another hotel out there. That reminds me, and I know I'm rambling here, but a lot of what we do at the Port Commission, our chain of command, if you will, from my military background, you have our Port Commission, you have the California Coastal Commission, and you have the State Lands Commission. And above the State Lands Commission, you have the Governor of California. That's how we work. So a lot of the things we do are subject to review by them. For example, that Port Master Plan update, hopefully we'll have that to the California Coastal Commission by this time next year at the latest. And once they get it, the way the law is structured, they can only do one of two things with that master plan. They can give it a thumbs up, you're good to go, or a thumbs down. They can't change it at all. Is that right, Rebecca?
Correct.
Okay, good. All right, next one, please. Overall economic impact, again, we're a big contributor to the regional economy. $9.4 billion before the pandemic, and we think there's a lot of latent demand out there. I wouldn't be surprised in the next 2 or 3 years that easily jumps over $10 billion from a variety of sources. Again, probably the thing that the commissioners swear an oath to, when they swear it here in Coronado, and they swear it across the bay and the port, is how do you balance the environment, economic development, public safety, and recreation and leisure. So we're trying to connect the dots all that time. We're not looking in favor of one of those items or not. We try to balance that across the bay. And if you just look at, most of the development has occurred across the bay in downtown San Diego. Chula Vista, the South Bay will be transformed quite a bit, but that's the South Bay Wildlife Refuge area. That's the environmental side. Like working with the good folks at the Coronado Cays, we're trying to keep Grand Caribe Island pretty much a passive park, no development. On the other hand, Jen and I butt heads a little bit here. There's a pad that's vacant on the ferry landing that she would love to see as open space, and she's got a plan for that. That's great, but we have contracts right now to try to build a restaurant or 2 restaurants on that pad. Okay, next. I'm almost at the end, guys. I'm doing okay. And that's it. Thank you. Okay. So, commission time-wise. Okay, like any other public policy makers, like council member Donovan or council member Stanky, you get on a particular policy-making body, and it can be time-consuming. But then you get involved in a lot of other things: meetings with staff, briefings, working with the Navy, Caltrans, the port, Sandag, people like that. So you get sucked into it. So the only thing for this job, which you really need, and the bar's real low, that's how I got the job, is you have to be a resident of Coronado, I qualify. You have to be a registered voter, I qualify. You don't even have to vote, but those 2 things. And then you have to be willing to fill out a financial disclosure form every year. And I think we do ethics training every year or every other year, Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay, so you have to do that. So that's the minimum qualifications. But if you look at the 7 commissioners, we divide up the workload quite a bit, whether it's in the maritime area, the environmental area, accessibility. Accessibility is a big committee for us. So you get involved in those things. And then you get involved in all those other intergovernmental things. Why? It's important to build those relationships. Governments have a tendency to have their eyes full and keep things to themselves. So if you branch out, you want your friends when you need your friends. So that's real important. Time-wise, the person that really gets pulled away from their full-time employment is the chairman. And that's probably why my good colleagues are smart enough to rotate the chairmanship every year. The chairmanship takes a lot of time, and as I develop the agenda, it's pretty much a second full-time job, I would characterize that. I'm fortunate again to be retired, so besides representing Coronado on the Port Commission, I sit on the Sandag Board of Directors as an advisory member. I also sit on the Sandag Transportation Committee as a voting member. There's probably 3 or 4 other committees I sit on. So on an average week, I'm maybe putting in 10 or 12 hours a week in port business. Then there's probably 1 week, the week leading up to the monthly board meetings, where we have a closed session, like the city council does here, followed by an open session. And to prep for that, I have to talk to staff, get smart. Staff has to get me smart. And that's probably more intensive, where you're spending 25 or 30 hours. And a lot of that is me at home doing my homework online, based on the information I'm getting, and listening to my constituents and their concerns, and trying to balance that all out. So I'm going to shut up at this point, and then I think I've cut, and then try to take any questions you guys in the audience might have, or anybody might have online.
Yeah, so we have a microphone, so if you have questions here, I'll come to you and give you the microphone.
Good, that's it. First question,
You can get
okay.
it on Zoom.
Thank you for the first question.
All right, Gary, thank you so much for serving Coronado. You've done a great job. A few little questions here. Why are you not continuing?
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, Admiral Lou Smith had the job before you. I don't remember us going through this process that time. So was there this question? Did you?
Great question, okay. Since
what room people like
1965, when Coronado's been a part of the port, I'm the 8th commissioner, okay? Typically, the city council appoints you for 4 years, okay, for 4 years. So, and I asked to be, after my first 4 years, I petitioned the council, and they were kind enough, and gave me the leadership to serve 4 more years. I serve at the pleasure of the council. They could appoint me for another 4 years or another 4 years. Like I mentioned, Commissioner Duque Valderrama served for 16 years. I'm at the point in my life I don't want to serve anymore. That's the bottom line for me. I mean, but the council has that option. If they approach me, and I think I've talked to enough of them right now, that I'm hanging it up, okay? Not quitting, I'm hanging it up.
And if I can add also.
Okay, sure.
So the port doesn't limit the number of terms, but the city of Coronado, we have a term limit for 2 terms. So as much as we may want Commissioner Benelli to continue, that is our policy, so it coincides really well.
But they could always waive that. They could always waive the
Follow up
policy.
on that, back to that question. Did we do this when Lou Smith, and I'll follow up to yours, did Lou Smith, I thought he only did 4 years.
He did. Lou Smith, after his after his initial 4-year term, decided he was going to move on to other things. So it was his choice, not to reapply to the city council, okay? And if you look at the history of those 8 commissioners, some of them have only served about 2 years. There's probably one commission that served about 10 years, but for the most part, they've done 2 full-year terms. Good question. Kim Totals.
I don't have to use the.
Well, we'd like you to, so the Zoom.
We got other people.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Gary, do you see the port commissioner position from Coronado as being in any way different from port commissioners from other cities around the bay, and if so, how?
Good question. So just to repeat it for the folks that are tuning in, do I perceive the port commissioner from Coronado different from the other 6 port commissioners? My quick answer, Kim, is yeah, we're better. No. No. Pretty.
I know it's 3 in San Diego and 4, 1 each from the other cities, but I just wondered if you saw special issues in Coronado that.
No, I think we, and I don't want to sound like a broken record. I think we, as the 7 of us, make the best public policy when we step back and everybody has the competing needs and trying to do the balancing. When we make public policy that doesn't advantage or disadvantage any particular constituency or geographic area. We're trying to make what's best for the whole bay. So, land use is always contentious in California, especially in Southern California. And when you look at land use here on the port and around the bay, on the water, every square inch can get emotional at times. And the honest answer is, Kim, no. I think I think if we're functioning, in Gary Benelli's opinion, I think if we're functioning well as public policy makers, we're making decisions for the entire bay. Yes, ma'am. For one.
Gary, what do you see as the 2 or 3 most significant issues that the Port Authority is going to face, maybe the most contentious upcoming in the next few years?
Coronado specific or Bay-wide?
Bay-wide.
Bay-wide, again, probably the #1 is getting that port master plan update through the Coastal Commission. That lays out the land and water uses for the next 20 or 30 years, right, Rebecca? 35 years, okay? 35 years. So that's probably the biggest lift we have over the next 12 months. I'm very confident that the development down in Chula Vista, because of Ann Moore, and will do very, very well. The next biggest issue that will have the most impact, and it impacts Coronado definitely directly, is if you look at Seaport Village. Some people love Seaport Village, want to keep it exactly the way it is, and I understand that. And we're doing gangbusters, getting new tenants in there, and they appear to be doing very well post-pandemic now. But we are working with a developer to look at what can be done better at Seaport Village. So I think over the next year to 18 months, we'll get a much better feel for where we may be going there.
Do you mean Seaport Village or the ferry landing?
I mean Seaport Village, I'm not at the ferry landing. So the ferry landing is important. It's important to us in Coronado, but it pales in comparison to the other ones in Gary Benelli's opinion. I think for the ferry landing, one thing I tried to do last year, this calendar year, but because of the pandemic, it just didn't work out. I'd love for the port staff to come over in conjunction with the city and have a charrette on what the future of the ferry landing should be. The ferry landing is getting tired. It's, I've been around here since 1968. It's getting tired. We can do better with the ferry landing, in my opinion. Good question. Okay. Questions from the people that are virtually away from me? No, Jennifer says no right now. Okay, sure. We don't have to go to 7 o'clock.
A lot of questions, but I want to give other people a chance.
Sure.
I'm curious, because there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and you mentioned some of these.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the most influential stakeholders you do, and do some of them kind of exert pressure on you? Like, who are the stakeholders that you have to maybe deal with the most and are the most influential?
Sure, that's a very good question. That's an excellent question, and I'll give you a second. Probably of our immediate bosses, if you will, in my opinion, California Coastal Commission. But we have people like Sharon Clowett, the president of the San Diego Port Tenants Association, the Environmental Health Coalition, that's a national city that worries about the portside communities and all the environmental impacts they have. I remember when I first came on the commission 8 years ago, I talked to Commissioner Valderrama. I said, boy, we spend a lot of time with the Environmental Health Coalition. Why do we do that? And he goes, Gary, they spend a lot of time with us. It makes all the sense. So I think the Port Tenants Association, the Coastal Commission, the Environmental Health Coalition are probably the ones that have paid staff that spend and have the resources that spend a lot of time trying to work with us. I'll put it that way, okay? And us with them. Okay. Good question.
And I'll just say for the Zoom participants out there, if you have a question, if you could raise your hand or put it in the chat. Are we accepting that, Jennifer? Hey, you can put that in the chat, and we want to make sure you have an opportunity to have your questions answered as well.
Okay. Kim?
Will the port be
Wait,
doing?
wait.
Oh, sorry. Will the port be doing another round of capital improvement grants anytime soon? Weren't those
Yeah,
suspended?
that's a good question again. Typically, we do a call for projects amongst the 5 cities, but because we've been in the dumps, we've been in tourism and the cruise industry went in the dumps, and our budget went from 220 million to 150 million. Joe, can you answer that? Give us a flavor of when we might do another call for projects? Okay.
Thank you. I think that come this spring, as we start looking at our budget for next year, we'll be potentially looking at that. Right now, we're coming out of a deficit. We projected a deficit for this year. We're doing a little bit better than we think. If we get the stimulus money, then we think we may be in a position. I will tell you, the stimulus money came with a lot of controls, strings, requirements, and so on. And so a lot of that's going for heavy-duty maintenance, like, $11, $12 million to fix wharves and piers and pier pilings and all those kinds of things, and some for electrification, and so a lot of different things. We're as the commissioner said, we're trying to dig out of the hole. But I think it's possible that next spring we may have, we call it capital improvement program, we may have an opportunity to do, put some money in there.
The other thing while I'm thinking about it too is, as commissioners, the 7 of us only have 3 employees at the port. Joe Stuyvesant, our president and CEO, our general counsel, a guy by the name of Tom Russell, and then we have an independent auditor, port auditor. Those are our 3 employees. Everybody else works for Joe, and everybody else right now is about 550 folks, and about 150 of those are our harbor police, that are firefighters as well as police guys. And the guys and girls that work for the harbor police, I mean, I get the texts every night about the domestic violence calls, the sad situation on the bridge, if somebody leaves the bridge, they're the ones that are gonna pick them up. And the people that are really our frontline employees, and we don't have enough of them, I wish I could give them more resources, our general services department, the people that are in charge of all the cleanup around the bays, the maintenance, the painting, the lights, the electrical. They do a spectacular job with a relatively small staff. And we've got to try to figure out a way to get more resources for them.
And Commissioner Benelli, we now have some questions on Zoom.
Good.
So
We
turn
do.
to Jennifer, our city clerk.
Pat McGrath, can you please unmute?
Okay, hey Gary, this is Pat McGrath. It's good to see
You're from
you.
New York, Pat.
You know something, but you were a Mount St. Michael's guy, right?
Amen.
That's right. I was a Cardinal Spellman guy. Gary, listen, I have a question. You have been retired, although you mentioned you were on 3 or 4 other boards. I'm just curious as to you think how productive the other members of the commission were who still had jobs while they did it. Is it something that you could handle, or would you suggest that it'd be the kind of thing that'd be better left to someone who is retired from a full-time job?
Admiral, that's a great question, Admiral. I think it's like anything else. You give a busy man or a busy woman something to do, they're going to get it done. So my experience over the last 8 years are those folks that had full-time private positions, they got stuff done. I had the luxury of going over the agendas 2 or 3 times. They probably didn't. But my colleagues, like my former 6 colleagues and the ones now appear, Pat, that they get the work done. They find that they make the time to get the work done. Plus, they're in positions, they're senior enough people that they own their own firms or have their own business, or they're not that crazy that they can control their own personal agendas to get that work done.
I appreciate it, Gary. That's very good.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
tuning in, Pat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Stephanie, can you please unmute?
Got it. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can, Stephanie.
Hi, Gary. Stephanie. I submitted you an email and members of the city council and city clerk some topics I would like you to go over tonight because I think these are important for the new port commissioner. And my key concern is the California Coastal Act. And can you please tell us why it's important to understand the core principles of the Act, which maximizes public access to the coast, including recreational opportunities in the coastal zone, and why that leads the port's land use plans and what can and cannot be developed in our public tidelands. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for the question. I did have an opportunity to quickly read your email before I came in tonight, and I wanted to make sure I was squared away. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Harrington here, because let me tell you how I interpret your email. I interpret your email that there's a hierarchy of uses within the Coastal Act, and to my knowledge, that's not the case. But Rebecca, can you try to explain that a little bit?
Sure. Hi, Stephanie. There's actually 2 acts that we abide by. There's the Port Act, which says we balance commerce, recreation, fisheries, and environmental and maritime. So, and equal footing is the California Coastal Act. And the Coastal Act actually does have a priority uses, but the first priority is coastal dependent uses, the water uses, the terminals you see, the docks, the recreational boating, the yacht clubs. And then from there, what they call coastal related uses take a little bit more of a back seat to them. One of the, you are correct in the sense that the Coastal Act does enable coastal access, public access to the coast. However, that access does not necessarily trump things like
hotel developments or restaurant developments. What the coastal, in my experience, the Coastal Commission wants to see is if you do have a hotel or a restaurant, that we enable some kind of public access through that use. So I hope that answered the question.
Can you hear me, or can I continue talking, or?
Go ahead, Stephanie. We'll let you chime in again.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I guess I'm still confused because, you know, there's a community request for a Coronado Cultural Arts Center at the ferry landing. And for members of the public, it doesn't make sense per the Coastal Act, since it's not a recreational type use and it is specific to, exclusive to Coronado, when in fact our public tidelands should be open to all Californians to have access to the bay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. Thanks.
Ms. Ekblad, do we have any additional Zoom comments? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're getting to the point. Yes. Okay.
Gary, it's Sydney Stanley. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you for your good work. And thank you for having the public meetings with
Thank the city too. Thank Tina.
Absolutely. The port came over during the review of the initial port master draft plan and did a great job working to take in input from the community of Coronado. And this review period now for the current draft is going to close off December 23rd.
All right.
I have two questions. Are you in your position through December 23rd?
Hopefully not. I'm in my position until the city council swears in a new person, and according to Ms. Friend here, they could do that on November 30th, or they might do it in one of the 2 December council meetings.
Okay, so my concern is that we have another community meeting where we get input on the revised draft master plan. I think the plan is good. They've done a great job. But there are areas where we need to have further definition and discussion. So with your transitioning out and your knowledge, maybe you could come as a private citizen and add something to that, or we'll.
I might. I'm home for the holidays.
But I would hope that there would be an ability, because having a public comment during the holiday is pretty challenging.
Absolutely.
So it really requires leadership to bring
Absolutely.
the people to the table and to have people be able to share their input.
I think Coronado is a great case study of a member port city where when we first put out the PMPU, there was a lot of stuff we Coronadoans didn't like, okay? And I think Coronadoans respectfully and through a variety of means, and I don't do any social media, but through a variety of means, made their wishes known. One thing I'm very proud of the port, my service on the port, and it's kudos to the staff, is not only do they go out there and beat the bushes and listen, but they come back and actually make changes that we as policymakers can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Mike Suquette says it best. He was with the city of San Diego for quite a long time. This is not this in the city of San Diego, but he always reminds the staff how good of a job and how dedicated and how diligent they are compared to other larger cities around the bay. So I hear what you're saying. I hear your concern really well. There could be a disconnect, and I will do everything in my power to make sure there is not a disconnect. So the concerns you express or the changes you want will be heard by this port staff, and we'll make sure whoever he or she, the new port commissioner is, that they understand that. Okay, good.
Gary, first of all, I want to say thank you so much. You have been so responsive to some of the concerns that we've had.
I didn't get the sign down far enough, though.
So I just want to thank you on behalf of Coronadans for all the good work you've done and for being so responsive. I mean, giving me your cell phone number and telling me to text you whenever I needed to was above and beyond, so thank you for that. A couple of questions. I'd like to know, first of all, Coronado is somewhat different from the other port cities in that we are a residential neighborhood, right? And some of the adjoining development or proposed development has a real material impact on the residents of Coronado, not just our quality of life due to the pollution, to the noise, turning our city into an entertainment venue where music is playing at all hours, and there's a lot of trash, and there's a lot of tourists that come through. And I realize that a big part of what we are at Coronado is to attract tourism. But specifically for the port commissioner who's representing Coronado, how does that person balance being on the port with the other commissioners and trying to advocate for the goals of the port, and at the same time representing us and what's important to us? Our way of life, climate change, overdevelopment, health and safety, making sure that our streets don't collapse from the weight of whether it be dump trucks or too many tourists or whatever it may be. So how do you, and maybe you don't know the answer to that, but I'd like to hear from anybody who's even interested in this position to hear what we have to say about that. And is there any advice or comment you want to make in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely, and you make good points, Jim. You really do. I think if whoever's selected as the next Coronado Port Commissioner, if they focus on Coronado, they'll fail for Coronado. They have to look at Bay-wide policy. They have to work with their colleagues on the port. They have to work with all the city council people around the Bay. I hear your plea. I really do. I know where you live, and the people that are close to you in the landing and the point look a lot like me, older folks, and that change is driving them crazy. And all the activity on our Bay that we actively spend a lot of resources to promote degrades their quality of life. I'll tell you that, degrades their quality of life. How you balance that out, I'm not sure. And I'm not trying here to scare people, but the reality is, over the next 30 years, when you look from your home across that bay, 70,000 new people, 70,000 new workers, 100,000 people. When they get over there, they see the Crown City, they say the Emerald Island, they'll want to come over here. So we've got to figure out with the city fathers here and mothers, what's the best balance.
Let me ask a follow-up question because I think it's even more important.
Okay.
It's not just us. It's my kids, my grandchildren, your grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
How do we plan for
yes,
that?
I have a
Because, climate change is real and it's here. And we have not planned for it. I'm sorry to say, I don't think, and please counsel hear my plea here, we need to provide for what is going to happen in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years. So aside from the 70,000 people across the bay, what are we going to do? What is the plan? And what is the role of the port commissioner in effectuating a plan that makes sense, not just for everybody around the bay, but also for the people here in the city of Coronado, because after all, that commissioner is representing our interests.
Absolutely. I see the port commissioner as a clearinghouse for that. Each of the cities are going to have their own climate action plan, how they deal with sea level rise, okay? No one city can go it alone, especially around our bay here. So we've got to have that, we've got to connect the dots, have that all put together. For example, the development we're doing in Chula Vista, we're raising the ground 14, 16 feet, knowing that, I think, I know for a fact, all my fellow commissioners, climate change is real, sea level rise is real. We're working very closely with the United States Navy, with Scripps Institution of Oceanography, with the United States Geological Service to come up with a plan for coastal resiliency. That's the catchphrase right now. But how well we do remains to be seen. Remains to be seen, and it's a big concern. I mean, some people view it as an existential threat for humanity. That's a great note. Okay. Okay, we're getting there. One or two more questions. Ms. Cloward from the San Diego Port Tenants Association. Isn't that a right-wing paramilitary organization?
Well, I just wanted to add to your comment that you had about the climate action plan. Our port was the first port, period, anywhere that took action on a climate action plan. That's how serious they are. There's no other ports that have done that, so praise the port because they actually took that. all the cities were doing their different things, but you got the port as a whole, and the port is the one that, you know, is at the coastal lands. So they really took action on that years ago, and something to be proud of. So I guarantee you, they're in it on this thing, on the climate action.
That's one of our sharpest critics there, that lady right there. Good. Okay, let's see, the only thing, let's see, what else can I leave it? The only thing, I've always had the philosophy on a variety of different levels with a variety of different organizations. I'm very fortunate to be with great organizations. The Port's one of those great organizations. And I think the Port, probably more than most organizations, exemplifies this. You've got to think globally, you've got to plan regionally, and act locally. Yeah. So that works well.
Say that again,
Okay. Plan, think globally, plan regionally, act locally. That's how it works. The last thing, very last thing, 3 things. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for participating tonight to learn a little bit more about the Port. Thank you for considering to be an applicant, maybe for this position. And thank you to whoever that man or woman is that the City Council selects. Thank you for your public service in the future.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Vanelli.
Thanks. My cell phone, okay, cell phone number. You can text me, or if you call me, I'm not gonna know who you are, so leave a voicemail and I'll call you back. Cell phone number 619-346-8567. I never called my phone. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner Vanelli. That was great.
Thanks, Dina.
And just for some follow-up on the next steps on the city side, so we have an application period that's still open. Applications are due November 15th. I do have some hard copies here if you want one in paper. They're available on our website, Coronado website, under the boards, commissions, and committees page. You scroll down, there's links there at the bottom. Please take a look at that. They're fillable. Send those in. The City Council will hold interviews in a special City Council meeting on November 30th. So that will be the opportunity for applicants to come meet with the council. That will be an open public meeting. The same questions asked to all. So that will be happening. And then the appointment, the council could appoint that day if they feel prepared to do that on November 30th. If they need more time, then we can schedule that for one of the 2 meetings in December, as Commissioner Vanelli referenced. And finally, I also have up here position specifications. These were adopted by the council in 2013. Also on our website, but please take one if you like. And with that, thank you so much for coming on your Wednesday evening, and thank you again to Commissioner Vanelli and to the Port staff for joining us.
And if you know some other people that might be interested, please tell them to go to the website and take a look. Or call the city manager.
Great. All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Gary.
Good.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Great to see you. Well done, well spoken.
Nice to see you again.